Here's something that's easy to remember. Did you know that in the state of Georgia, it's illegal to give away a goldfish to entice someone into a game of poker? Well, when it comes to the eviction laws in the state of Georgia, things can get a little bit more complicated. So I hope your memory is a little more reliable than a goldfish. Let's face it, evicting a tenant is not fun. You have to go to court, prepare legal documents, and make sure you have all the evidence to back it all up. But if you make even one mistake, you could have to start the process all over from the beginning or get hit with hefty fees and fines. That's why in this video, we're going to give you everything you need to know about the eviction process in Georgia. But remember, we're not attorneys and this is not legal advice. You need to do your own research whenever you're going through a process just like this. So with all that out of the way, let's get into it. First of all, what can you evict a tenant for? That's a good question. You need to know what you can legally initiate an eviction for in Georgia. When it comes down to it, there are three main reasons that this might happen. The first one is failure to pay rent on time. First, you can evict a tenant who has failed to pay rent on time, but you must give the tenant a written or verbal notice to pay rent before the beginning of your eviction process. The good news is that Georgia doesn't make landlords wait for a certain number of days after delivering this notice to proceed with the eviction. But it's a good idea to include this notice period in your lease moving forward to ensure your tenants have upfront knowledge of your policy. The second reason is the violation of the lease/rental agreement. You can also evict a tenant that has committed a lease violation. This can include things like staying longer than indicated on the lease, disturbing other tenants with loud activity, damaging rental property, smoking in non-smoking areas, keeping pets in pet-free properties, and engaging in criminal activity. In Georgia, landlords don't have to give their tenants an opportunity to fix the lease violation. You only need to provide a notice that says the tenant has violated their lease and must now vacate the property. And the third reason is non-renewal of the lease after the rental period ends. Finally, you can also evict a tenant when their lease expires naturally, but there are two ways to do this. If you have a month-to-month lease, then Georgia law requires you to give your tenant a 60-day notice period to vacate before kicking them out of the unit. But if you have a fixed-term lease, then the tenant is expected to move out of the unit at the conclusion of the lease if they haven't renewed. If they try staying in the unit without a lease, you can begin the eviction process right away. Now that we talked about the reasons, let's talk about the eviction process itself in Georgia. First up, we have filing a complaint. The first thing you want to do is file the complaint in the Georgia court system. You can do that on the Justice Court's website for the jurisdiction where the rental property is located. The complaint is a short legal document that lays out all the reasons why you're beginning this eviction. You have to make sure it's formatted correctly and includes the right information for the judge. And if you need any help with this, you can find eviction templates online for Georgia. Once you've completed your complaint and are ready to file it with the court, you'll have to pay a filing fee of $60 to $75 to get the process started. The next step is serving notice. After that, you're ready to serve notice to the tenant. This step is basically designed to let the tenant know about the legal case you've started against them. And there are three ways that you can serve a tenant with a legally valid notice. First, you can provide personal service. This involves having a court official actually deliver the legal notice to the tenant in person. If you're not able to do that, then you can use something called substituted service. This allows you to provide service to an adult living with the tenant instead of the tenant themselves. And the third way is that you can use the posting and mailing method. This involves mailing the tenant a copy of the legal documents via first-class mail and also posting them in a secure and visible position by the tenant's unit, typically on their door. Next, you're going to file a motion for possession. Once you've successfully served your tenant, they'll have 7 days to respond to it. If the tenant doesn't respond, then you can win the eviction proceedings by default. But if they do respond, then you'll need to file a motion to obtain a judgment for possession of the rental unit. If you end up needing to file a motion for possession, then you'll have to provide evidence showing that you have a valid reason for the eviction. And of course, these valid reasons can be any of the three that we mentioned earlier. The next step in the process is receiving a judgment and executing the eviction. When you win the case, you'll receive a writ of possession, no less than 7 days after. This is an official legal document that gives the tenant 7 days to vacate the unit. But keep in mind, you can't forcibly evict the tenant yourself. If you have a valid writ of possession and they still refuse to leave, then you can get the sheriff involved to execute the writ of possession and reclaim the unit on your behalf. If you try to forcefully remove the tenant on your own, you can get hit with hefty legal fees and penalties, even if you have a court order saying that they have to vacate the property. So there you have it. Now you should have a good sense of what the process looks like if you're evicting a tenant in Georgia. But you may be asking yourself, can you do this on your own, or should you hire an attorney? Hiring an attorney is never a bad idea. They'll make sure you complete every step of the eviction process correctly to avoid errors that can cost time and money. That being said, it is possible to evict a tenant without an attorney if you want to save money. Just please make sure that you really do your research before proceeding. You don't want to overlook a critical step and end up having to start the process all over because of one small mistake. Now, there's something else that we should mention, which is keeping evidence. It is very, very critical to the outcome of your case to make sure they have all the evidence you need to win the trial. Now, evidence can constitute the following: payment records, including missed payments, pictures and videos of lease violations, copies of your leasing documents, messages from tenants, and maintenance requests. Now, there are many ways to store all your files and documents, but this is one instance where a property management software like DoorLoop can be really helpful. It keeps all these records in a single place so you can access them whenever you need without having to worry about storing them all yourself or losing track of different documents that you might need. So if that's something that interests you, you can sign up for a free demo at doorloop.com. Now that about wraps up everything you need to know about evicting a tenant in Georgia. But before we go, we want to leave you with 3 more frequently asked questions. So, how long does it take to evict a tenant in Georgia? An eviction in Georgia can take anywhere from 14 to 80 days to complete. It depends on whether the tenant fights the eviction and if you need to involve the sheriff to forcefully remove them from your property. Also, what eviction methods are legal in Georgia? You cannot use any so-called self-help eviction methods in Georgia. This includes things like cutting off a tenant's utility, changing their locks, and destroying the tenant's property. And lastly, what are the penalties for a self-help eviction? If you try to complete a self-help eviction, the tenant will be able to sue you for damages. They'll also be able to get legal rights to stay in the unit, which defeats the whole purpose. So it's undoubtedly in your best interest to make sure you go through the proper channels when going through an eviction. We hope we were able to give you a good overview of what the eviction process is like in Georgia. But remember, you need to do your own research when going through a situation just like this. Don't forget to like and subscribe to see more property management content, and we'll see you soon in the next one.